Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled parent stories. Our first story we'll be reading today: How I Helped Someone Get Revenge on Their Gold-Digging Significant Other. After that, am I the jerk for giving my MacBook to my cat and not my sister? And after that, sir, this can take as long as you need. I'm paid by the hour. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen loses her flip-flops. But I need those! So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. How I helped someone get revenge on their gold-digging significant other. This happened some years ago, but I was just reminded of it. So here you go, Reddit. I worked as a front desk agent in a large luxury hotel chain for years. One particular hotel I worked at was located really close to the downtown area, and so we got a large number of young, very wealthy business people who loved to party. I usually worked the second and third shifts, which meant I got to see loads of drunks, breakups, cheating, and more. This particular one though, this is one I will never forget. I was working at the front desk when a group of young, well-dressed men come walking in. They've all clearly been drinking, but aren't so drunk that they can't walk right or hold a conversation. One of them comes up to me and tells me that while he and his friends were at the bar, a woman was hitting on him, and even though he told her no multiple times, she wouldn't stop. So he and his friends left, and it wasn't until they got in the Uber that he realized he didn't have his room key anymore. He thinks she took it, and he's concerned that she may come up to his room. He asked that I deactivate his keys, and if she does come up to the hotel, to not let her in. When he was telling me all of this, it didn't sit right with me. He and his friends were all grinning about it and snickering amongst one another. Then he gave a clear description of her without being asked. Told me her height, body shape, hair color, and style, the kind of dress she was wearing, all while saying it in a mocking tone. Now, this could have easily been because he thought the whole thing was ridiculous or he was too drunk to take it seriously, but it really didn't sound right to me. Either way, I did as I was trained in that situation. I pulled up his reservation, deactivated the keys as requested, made him a new set when he showed me his ID, and even offered to move him to a new room if that would make him feel more comfortable. He and his buddies all laughed a little at that, and he declined, took the keys, and they went to their room. About an hour or so later, the woman he described showed up. Now, by this point, my relief for the night had also shown up and was sitting at the front desk while I was in the back office counting down my cash drawer. I hadn't had a chance to tell him about the lady. Just as I'm walking out of the back office with my bag and about to leave, I see my coworker buzz the doors open and the lady comes rushing in, cuts through the lobby and down the hall to the elevators. She was barefoot, holding her heels in her hands and knew exactly where she was going. I rushed up to him and told him what the man from before had told me about her. My coworker looked at me confused. He then pointed to the screen that had the reservation pulled up and told me that when the woman arrived, she went to use the room key and it didn't work. So he asked for her room number and last name. She gave both, and her name is on the reservation. I looked at the reservation and down in the notes, there was a woman's name listed. The man from before was listed as the primary, but her name was listed as secondary with his consent to be in the room. I was confused. I thought maybe she wasn't the same woman he was talking about. But to be on the safe side, I called the man in his room and told him the situation and that we allowed a woman fitting that description he gave to enter the building because she confirmed her name was on the room. He laughed, said he forgot her name was on the room, and asked that I remove it. I was now super confused. I asked to make sure. Me: Sir, just to be clear, the woman you met at the bar tonight was with you at check-in hours ago and was allowed keys then, but now she's not? Him, laughing to all of his friends in the room. Oh, guys, I confused the poor girl. Gets back on the phone with me. Yeah, sweetheart, she's banned from the room. Don't worry about the other details, just take her name off. Me: I see. Then, if she isn't going to be in the room anymore, would you like us to call the police and have her removed from the property? Him: Ha ha ha, whoa, that's too far there. Don't worry, she'll get the hint soon enough. We ended the call there, and I got really suspicious of this. I told my coworker to not do anything and that I was going to stick around for a bit to see if anything happened. A short time later, the woman came off the elevator, pouring tears, sobbing while on the phone with someone. She sat down in our lobby, and my coworker and I tried to look busy while eavesdropping hard on her phone call. She was sobbing on the phone to her mom and sister. From what she told them, she was invited out to spend the week with her boyfriend, meeting all of his old college buddies. This being their first night, they all met up for dinner and drinks. After a bit, she went to the restroom, and when she came back, she caught her boyfriend hitting on another woman. His friends all bet that he wouldn't do it. When she confronted him about it, he called her a bunch of names and humiliated her in front of his friends and the entire bar. All of his friends joined in on mocking her, and he threw in her face that she was nothing without him and dumped her right there. He and his friends then took an Uber back and left her stranded at the bar with no money and no way back. She then had to use her phone's GPS and walk back to the hotel from the bar. Barefoot, she had heels, and walking 2 miles in those was not going to cut it. She was asking her mom and sister for help as he wouldn't let her in the room to get her luggage or her wallet. My heart broke. I felt horrible. I helped this guy treat this poor woman like crap, and now he and all his friends were up there laughing at her while she's sitting in our lobby sobbing and with nothing. I went over to our snacks area in the lobby, grabbed her a bottled water, and brought it to her. I told her that I couldn't help but overhear the conversation and was very sorry for her situation and asked if she would like us to help. I informed her that if he was keeping her from getting to her things, we could call the police and have them force him to hand over her stuff so she could leave if she'd like. Or if she wanted to let her mom or sister pay for a room, we'd be happy to give her a very low rate in a room far from him. She thanked me, took the water, and tried to calm down and talk to me about what all was happening and what her options were. Eventually, we decided on her staying in the hotel for the night and figuring out the rest in the morning. As we make it to the desk, she asks me to try and run her credit card to see if it has enough on it for another room. I ask her what she means by another room, and she tells me that she's actually paying for the room he's in, that his name is on the room because he booked it, but it's her card paying for everything. This intrigued me. I asked why she was paying for the room if it was in his name. She told me that she's the one with a job, not him, that he hasn't been able to find a job in his field since graduating from college and is essentially living off of his parents' money. But just after they started dating, his parents cut him off, so he's been living off of her money. That's why she was so upset and confused by how he had been acting all night. He was sweet and doing everything for her back home, but since he met up with his friends, he did a 180 and hasn't been the same guy the entire time. I wanted to tell her that it was obvious he was using her for the money and that he would probably blame his friends for all of this and try to get back with her later on. But I doubted she would have listened to me or cared for a complete stranger to butt in on her personal life like that. So instead, I offered up a sweet piece of revenge. I informed her that, considering she's the one paying for the room, if she can confirm that it's her card on file with some sort of photo ID and verify the last 4 digits of the card number, that's honestly all this hotel company required, then she could, if she wanted to, kick him out of the room and keep it all to herself. But considering how poorly her night had been, if she were indeed able to prove she is the one paying for the room, then I'd be more than happy to provide her the biggest luxury upgrade we offered at our property. Largest suite we had, full hotel amenity access. I'd even have my coworker fish out a bottle of champagne and some fresh strawberries for her to have sent to her room, all free of charge. She was taken aback by the offer and was very sincerely tempted. She looked like she was about to say no. Then I told her that since she would be upgrading her room, that would require moving her things from that room into her new one, which meant the room that she is currently listed in would need to be vacated immediately. If anyone were to remain in that room after we have demanded it be vacated, we are required to have them escorted off the property or they pay for the room. Their choice. She then thought about it, pulled up her card's banking app, and showed me the screen. It had a photo of her, her full name, the card's full number, and the hold from our hotel for the room. She asked if that worked. It was good enough for me. I quickly upgraded her, moved everything over in this system, and before I could say a word to my coworker, he was already grabbing a set of master keys, a bell cart, and was asking her what her luggage looked like, since he would be the one retrieving it for her to deliver to her room. He didn't want her to have to deal with her ex again. She smiled and told him which ones were hers and that she hadn't unpacked yet. My coworker runs down to the elevators and over to fetch her things, while I make her a new set of keys and send her off to her new room. Once she's on the elevator, my phone at the desk starts ringing. It's the ex-boyfriend, and he's very angry about why my coworker has entered the room and is taking her things. I calmly explained that I cannot give out the private information of any of our guests and that if he would like to remain in his room, he will need to pay for it, as there is no longer a method of payment on his room. He blew up. He's making a ton of demands, and at the same time yelling at my coworker to stop what he's doing. But it's obvious from the way he's yelling at him that my coworker isn't listening to him. I can even hear the guy's friends telling him to chill out and to just pay for the room. I then explained that we will give him a courtesy 10 minutes to make a decision, at which point, if he doesn't have payment ready, then he must vacate the building or we will be forced to call the authorities and have him evicted. He continues to yell at me. He screams and threatens and yells for a solid minute before taking a breath. I then tell him he has 9 minutes remaining and ask if he has come to a decision yet. He hangs up on me. 9 minutes later, I call the room and he doesn't answer. I call again, no answer. I call a third time and he picks up, then immediately hangs up. I call the police and tell them what's going on and they say they're on their way. The officers arrive and I tell them what's going on. We go up to the room together and the man and his friends are all white as ghosts when they see the cops. The cops explain to the ex-boyfriend and his friends that they're being evicted. The ex-boyfriend starts trying to talk to me, but the cop stops him and tells him to only talk to them. I told him about his attitude on the phone before. The friends are all offering to pay for the room at this point, and the cops look to me and ask if that would be acceptable. I smile very sweetly and say no, and the cops nod and start rushing all of the guys to grab their things and leave the room. The ex-boyfriend is the last one out the door, carrying his 2 bags and complaining that he isn't even given a luggage cart and he has to carry his own things. His friends all look upset with him. I go with the officers to escort all of them out of the building and run into my coworker in the lobby. He waits until they're all outside in the parking lot to tell me that the woman is in her new room, loves it, and said no to the champagne. She just wanted to sleep. I didn't get to see her before she left town the next day, but the ex-boyfriend did try calling our hotel to complain a number of times and even tried leaving some bad reviews of us online and lied through all of it. I hope she doesn't have to ever deal with him again. Speaking of hotels, what's your favorite hotel you've ever stayed at? Please let us know. Bellagio for the win. Am I the jerk for giving my MacBook to my cat and not my sister? Okay, so I know this sounds a little ridiculous, so bear with me. Just last week, I purchased a new MacBook for myself. My old one lasted me 5 years and it's still technically working, but due to some water damage, the speakers are completely done for. The screen flickers quite a bit when not charging, and overall it's just slow. I have no use for it anymore. Regarding my cat, so I live in a fairly small apartment, and although it has windows, there really isn't much to see, besides a few trees in the parking lot really. I got my cat a few months ago, and I have a cat tree by the window, shelves and spaces so she can climb up high, and quite a few toys to play with. At first, my cat had no problem hanging by the window, but eventually I noticed she started to get bored, and while I'm in the middle of working, she would constantly meow or do mischievous things. I put on cat TV a few times for her and noticed she really enjoyed it and would stare at it for hours. However, I would put this on my new TV, as this was really the only free screen I had. She would at times pounce at the TV, once almost knocking it back. After I got my brand new laptop, I figured I'll barely get anything for selling my old one. I might as well use it for my cat. It works great. I put on Cat TV on YouTube and have the back of the laptop screen against the wall beside me. So while I'm working, she just sits there looking at the screen, occasionally pawing at it, and then falling asleep. Of course, I still play with her and give her plenty of pets, but I found this is a great way to keep her mentally stimulated. This also prevents any concern of her damaging my electronics or hurting herself. I took a photo of her sitting and looking at the laptop because it looked like she was hard at work and thought it was funny and sent it to my family. My brother and mom laughed, but my sister messaged me. Sister: "Hey, you gave your MacBook to the cat?" Me: "Yes, mine was pretty banged up and I needed a new one, and this keeps her occupied." "Okay, well, if you're no longer using it, can I have it?" Me: "Well, there really is no point, considering there are so many issues with it. It's not like the cat owns it. I just use it for her to keep her occupied when I feel like she needs to see more than just the parking lot." Sister: "So you're gonna keep it for your cat rather than give it to me, who needs it for school? MacBooks aren't cheap." Me: "I'm aware they aren't cheap, but there are other companies." This basically went on for a bit until she said I was being an inconsiderate jerk. If the MacBook was in better condition, I would totally give it to her. but fixing the screen and speakers and replacing the battery will cost about the same or more as a mid-range Windows laptop. My mom and brother just kinda laughed at it and said not to worry, but my sister is being pretty cold with me. Am I the jerk? Well, who do you agree with? OP or their sister? Please let us know. We can solve this whole thing by just giving it to me. And give me that new one too while you're at it. Sir, this can take as long as you need. I'm paid by the hour. I do feel kind of bad about this one now, but it happened a few years ago and it's a funny story to tell, so what the heck. I used to be a shift manager at a collectibles store where we sold a lot of used movies, games, figurines, etc. The kind of place that old school collectors drool over, so we saw our fair share of enthusiasts coming and going. A lot of them were really nice, passionate people that were just jazzed as heck that they had a local place to look for rarities. Often chatty, often not super aware of how much time they were taking from staff by striking up a conversation. But it was both good for business and pretty fun to oblige these people when they came in, so we often did. We had a guy who, for a period of a few months, would come in about once a week to look at the cartridge games. The thing to know about our cartridge games is that they were all on display in this large glass case, which, if you wanted to sift through them, required an employee to wait with you to prevent theft. Some stuff in those cases was worth hundreds of dollars. Not typically a big problem, but this guy often bought items in bulk and had very particular tastes. I'm not sure if he was a reseller, which we sometimes saw, or an honest-to-goodness collector, but he'd only ever buy bags of our cheapest stock. Every week he'd come in and request someone open each case one by one, and he could spend 45 minutes to an hour just browsing through titles. This wouldn't have been the biggest deal, but we typically only had 3 or 4 people working, and the store could get pretty busy on evenings and weekends. Going from 2 cashiers to 1 cashier made a big difference. We would end up getting swallowed by the late day rush without one of our staff members so consistently that we started making a policy just for this guy, where he could leave his ID at the counter with us as collateral and browse through the games unattended. However, this didn't stop other people from nabbing stuff while he wasn't looking, so it wasn't a sustainable option. Along with spending forever browsing, this guy also took an eternity to check out. He would group the games up by price, type his estimated cost into a calculator, add tax, then when you rang it up, he'd argue with you about how, no, this isn't what I got. Look at this, and show you the calculator and explain the math, as if any of this was manually calculated by us, which was basically always wrong. To his credit, sometimes discounts had to be manually added to certain items that I know at least one newbie forgot to do. But in general, most of the time, the computer would generate the correct price and he'd argue it. I didn't like him coming in and causing backups, especially because he was rude to my staff when he did it. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. On a day when I was shift leader, I saw him enter the store. I pulled aside one of my cashiers and told him to just help the guy as usual, then let me ring him up. My employee got the idea and did as I asked, walking our regular to the cabinets and babysitting him for nearly an hour. Luckily, it was early afternoon and we weren't terribly busy. When the customer finally got to the counter, he had a basket full of items, stacked them up, and I hopped in front of the computer. He started punching all of his values into the calculator and got right to work telling me about how much each thing should be and what the total should come to. I put on my best customer service smile and said, "Of course, sir. I want to make sure that you're getting everything exactly as calculated, so we can go down the items together and make sure everything rings up correctly." Our computers ran on a system that would automatically scan a price and generate the number, but for things like specialty sales and discounts for items that didn't have their own product entry, it was possible for a manager to key in a manual price for any item scanned, even if it was the same price. So that's exactly what I did. For each item, reading the price out slowly to him to make sure he heard it. And he had 118 items. I went down each old cartridge, clearly stating and typing them. $1.99, $2.99, $1.99, and he followed along with me. By the time I got to the end of the list, it must have been 15 to 20 minutes of just scanning items, and I gave him his total. Of course, he countered it. He told me that that's not what he got on his calculator and showed me the math and explained how everything should have been applied. My mistake, sir. Let's go through it again to make sure we have everything right. I cleared the transaction and started over. One more time, all 118 items, reading each price as slowly and clearly as I could, plunking the number keys loudly as I typed them in. Again, another 15 to 20 minutes of just scanning and typing. The customer was looking slightly agitated, but followed along on his calculator, and when I got to the end of the list, the total was exactly the same as before. He shook his head, saying no, that's not right, there's something wrong with the computer. I watched him go through the math again, retyping everything in, then after a moment, he paused, surprised.
Oh, I added one of these in wrong. Okay, you had the right price.
I did my best to keep my face as calm and apologetic as possible. I'm sorry, sir, but after you said the math was wrong, I cleared the transaction again. No worries, we can scan the items back in. So there we went, round 3, 118 items. Me typing in each price manually and reading it out loud, nice and slow, so he could be sure I was doing it right. At this point, he had definitely caught on to what I was doing. He quietly said,
"Could we hurry it up a little?"
And so I started reading and plunking a bit faster. Still took a nice 15 minutes to get through the list again, and lo and behold, same price as before. He paid the total without another word and left with his items. I never saw him back in the store again, at least not while I was working. Boss makes major changes to the schedule and gets me fired. This happened way back in the 90s when I had a night job as a computer operator on a mainframe. Big computer that Windows 3.1 is more powerful, or so it seemed. Our company relocated to a neighboring state over a weekend, and I was scheduled to work Saturday and Sunday nights, 12 hours each, and have off Friday, but was told to call Friday at 6 p.m. for directions to the new place. While I was there, I didn't know how to get there from where I lived. Since I wasn't scheduled, I ran the errands that I would do over the rest of the weekend because of the schedule, and at 6 I called. Conversation went like this. Me: "Hello, boss. I'm calling to get directions to the new building." Boss: "Good." He gave me directions and said he'll see me in an hour. Me: "What? I'm not scheduled, and I haven't been to sleep yet as I wasn't supposed to be there." Boss: "Plans changed. Sorry, I forgot to call." This meant I wasn't going to get any sleep for basically 2 days, and I told him that. He didn't care. I said I've got to crash for a couple and would be there when I could. I grabbed a 2-hour nap and drove the hour there. Needless to say, I crashed out at 3 a.m. and was caught the next day by boss. I did get everything done I was supposed to get, but things happen. Well, I got threatened with being fired, but wasn't. But I was written up for it, and everyone else that was involved told him he was wrong. He didn't care. So 5 or 6 months of BS happened, and he decided to demote me to distribution clerk. This meant I had to separate thousands of pages of reports and get them to the right person. Of course, I wasn't trained to do this, and mistakes happened. So here's where the fun begins. He called me into his office, left the door open, and just yelled at me. He told me that I wasn't to separate or distribute the reports, just pull them off the printer and let someone that wasn't a mess up do it. I realized something then, and I smiled to myself and said for him to put that in writing. The idiot did. The letter with the company logo stated that under no circumstances was I to distribute the reports. I said okay and happily went on my way. He was going on vacation that night, and I knew the crap storm that was going to happen since that night, a Thursday on the last day of the month, was the night the paychecks were printed. Well, the difference with paychecks is that they were run through a special machine that separated them. There were about 500 or so, and then they would be placed in envelopes by the payroll department. They picked up first thing in the morning. So about 10 minutes before they were to arrive, I got my coffee and Danish and waited. Payroll clerk:
"Where are the checks?"
Me: "Over there." I pointed to a 2-foot pile of papers. Clerk:
"I need them separated."
Me: "Can't do it." Clerk:
"Why not?"
Me: "Boss ordered me not to." I showed her a copy of the letter as I took the original home. Clerk:
"We'll see about that."
Me: "Okay." Clerk got boss's underling, who was actually a decent person. Underling: "OP, what's going on?" Me: "Boss told me in no uncertain terms that under any conditions am I to separate or distribute any reports, so I'm not." Underling: "He knows the reasons. I'll authorize it." Me: "I'm not letting you take the heat for it. Call him and get permission. Once that's done, it'll take 5 to 10 minutes to do it." Underling: "Okay." He reaches for the phone, tries to call him, and no response. He went hunting, and there were no phones. I said sorry, won't do it. Finished my coffee, put my coat on, and went home. Told him I'd see him Monday, as I don't work Friday. I handed him the copy of his letter and left. They did manage to separate the checks eventually, and everyone got paid. I had direct deposit, so I didn't care. Nothing they could do to me as I followed my instructions to the letter, but I knew I was done there, and I didn't care. Boss got in trouble for that, and made it his goal to get me to quit. But I wanted unemployment, so that wasn't happening. I got fired a month later and was told my goodbyes were talked about for months. When I saw him by my now former workmates, I let him have it. Last thing I said to him was that his boss needed him under his desk now. Run along and bring tissues, you'll need some. About a month or so later, I wanted to say hello to the guys I worked with for 10 years, and who answers the phone? Boss. Except now he was demoted to what was my position and had to work third shift and weekends. He didn't last long. I found out later where he went to and realized a dear friend of mine worked there too. Got him fired. I ran into him at a street fair a year later, and the only reason I didn't rip him a new one was that he had his son with him. I'm too nice. You won't accept my card? Okay, see you soon. Yesterday, I had to go get my diploma at college. Yay, 2020 class, what's up? On the way there, I remembered my spoiled 6-year-old brother demands sweets every time someone comes home. So to avoid his tantrum and my mom yelling at me for not getting him anything, I decided to stop on my way back and buy him some candy. By the time I was back, everywhere was closed, except for a Walmart and a little deli owned by an old neighborhood couple, whom I'll call Boomer and Karen. So I decided to support our local community and whatnot. After standing on the socially distant line for a single chocolate bar, I finally got to the cashier/Karen, who refused to accept my card because the chocolate was like $2, and they only accepted 30 plus on debit. Both her and Boomer, with an old fart thinking their smart smirk, then suggested I buy more stuff to match the value. I refused, so she started yelling at me for wasting her time and messing with the store. Remember, I got a single chocolate bar. While she yelled, I saw a stand saying they were taking delivery orders through X app and little photos of different debit and credit cards. I had used it a few times already. I just looked at her, said okay, and left. When I was outside, I looked up their store. No minimum value and no delivery fee. So it was my time to smirk now. I waited a few minutes, ordered the dang chocolate, put the delivery address at a house a few numbers away, and waited there. Seeing Boomer trotting down the street in full protection gear with a single chocolate in a bag, look at me right under the delivery number he was looking for and stop in his tracks, the visible parts of his face getting redder and redder. Lovely. I extended my hand and said, "Thanks." He handed me the bag without a word. I watched as he walked back to his deli, taking mental notes to never go there again, then walked back home with a smile under my mask. This little game took almost 30 minutes, but the feeling of owning greedy boomers was worth it. So much for supporting the locals. I'm sorry I don't work next door. So I work for a martial arts studio. My husband is the instructor and I answer phones, sell contracts, and do the marketing. We're in a nice plaza with a very popular restaurant on one side and a tutoring center on the other. Due to everything that's been going on, we leave the doors locked and only allow people in if they have a reservation for the class. Students are only allowed in 5 minutes before their scheduled class. There's a large sign on the door that states our business name with a large logo. The text on the sign is large enough to be read by parents attempting to drop off on the curb. It states, "No reservation, no mask, no entry. No one will be permitted inside until 5 minutes before scheduled class." Today, my husband went to the back to check stock on uniforms and get an inventory together for me and left me up front alone to sanitize between classes. I masked up, spraying the air and all surfaces when someone tugs on the door. A lady and her son I don't recognize were standing on the sidewalk looking at me expectantly. I figured they wanted information, so I grabbed my keys, walked outside and greeted them. Me: "Hello, welcome to our martial arts studio. How can I help you?" Lady: "We have an appointment for my son to take a placement test." Me: realizing they want the tutoring center. "Oh, I'm sorry. This is martial arts studio. I think you're looking for the place next door." Lady: "Their door is locked. Let me in so my son can take his test. We have an appointment." She then tugs on the door to our place. Me: "I am very sorry. Without a reservation to one of our classes, I cannot let you or your son in. We are a martial arts studio and not a tutoring center. You want the next door down. Let me show you." I walked to the next door down and knocked on the glass to get the people inside's attention. Lady: "Just use your keys and let me in, or I'll take my business elsewhere. This is horrible customer service." Me: "Again, I don't work for that company. I can't let you in or help you with that." I knocked again as the tutoring center is quite large. The girl that works the front desk came out of the back and smiled at me and opened the door. Lady: "It's about time. This woman would not let me in. She has the worst customer service I've ever experienced." I have an appointment. Tutoring girl. She doesn't work here, but yes, come in and I'll get you situated. I went back to work and told my husband, who was wondering where I had gone. Anticlimactic, I know, but it gave me a chuckle, so I thought I'd share. The McDonald's Screeching Lady. I typically bring my lunch to work. However, on occasion, I will go to the nearby McDonald's. This probably happens about once a month or so. It was a weekday, and I was eating in the seating area. I was wearing my uniform, which is a black blouse and black slacks, but I had taken off my name tag for my break. I had my coat and my purse with me in the booth beside me, but I will give the entitled lady a benefit by saying she probably didn't notice it. As I was eating, the actual manager came over to my table. She had to teach a new hire how to make an ice cream cone, so she was giving it to me as no one had ordered one. Don't blame them, this was December, but free ice cream, so I accepted. Side note, I do know the manager from a previous encounter where I had to call 911 for an elderly lady in medical distress. I had to write out my version of events in a report for the manager, as I guess she had to report it to the head office. I wasn't surprised when she approached me because we do tend to say hello to one another when I go there. So I'm seated, eating, when an entitled lady approaches me. I work in customer service and immediately can tell that this lady is upset. Unfortunately, I was still in work mode, so I didn't immediately tell her to buzz off. Basically, the lady started to complain about the wait time for her food and that her son wasn't happy with his burger. I smiled, said it's lunch hour, so you probably should expect a wait time. The lady's son was not with her. I have no idea what his complaint actually was. The lady said I should hire more people so the lunch wait isn't so long. I realized she isn't just complaining to me randomly, and I told her I don't work here. This is when she said I clearly work here, as I'm in uniform and the worker was just talking to me. Still polite, I laughed a little and simply said I do know the manager, but I don't work here. She stormed off in a huff and I went back to eating, thinking that was that. Nope. I then hear her screeching from the counter area. I couldn't see her, but I could hear her berating the workers for ignoring her, then yell about how the manager was lazy and she demanded a corporate number. Something else must have happened because it was quiet when I packed up my things to leave. The entitled lady was still there, fuming, while the actual manager was talking to her calmly. I wish I could say the lady was kicked out of the store, but I left to return to work and prayed she didn't come over to my store, where I would actually need to deal with her. She didn't come over, and I hope I never see her again. Please come watch this video next, you will love it. And join as a channel member today and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make any kind of video you'd like us to, just come visit us on Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.